The House of Representatives voted to impeach Donald Trump this week, making him the first president to be impeached twice. However, it was unlike any impeachment we've ever seen and has a lot of people understandably wondering what the point was. Hey there, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Gerard LeConte, and I'm here every Sunday morning to talk about something that has caught my attention and compelled me to dive into deeper, usually something to do with American politics and government. This week we're talking about the second impeachment of Donald Trump. Specifically, we'll look at the articles of impeachment that were voted on, whether it was justified, what the arguments against it were, and at the end we'll talk about the point of it all, since the Senate won't be able to hold impeachment trials until after Trump has left office. Take a quick second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if this is the sort of content that you're into. Let's start with the article of impeachment itself. Thankfully for all of us, there's just one, and it's pretty simple. It essentially states that Trump's efforts to mislead the American people into believing that the election was fraudulent and his subsequent pressuring of state officials to change the vote tallies to reflect Trump victories in those states in order to undermine public confidence in and overturn the results of the election, in conjunction with his incendiary and insightful remarks leading up to and on the day of January 6th that resulted in the riot at the Capitol building, constitute high crimes and are impeachable offenses. More specifically, the articles state, in the months preceding the joint session, President Trump repeatedly issued false statements asserting that the presidential election results were the product of widespread fraud and should not be accepted by the American people or certified by state or federal officials. This behavior started even before the election, when he said that the only way he could lose is if the election was fraudulent.
Because the only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged. Remember that.
Then, on election day, he started telling his followers that the election was being stolen from them. As the charges grew, he and his various propaganda outlets started to spread rumors and lies to try and justify the president's claims, which the president in turn amplified. The articles continue. President Trump's conduct on January 6, 2021 followed his prior efforts to subvert and obstruct the certification of the results of the 2020 presidential election. Those prior efforts included a phone call on January 2, 2021, during which President Trump urged the Secretary of State of Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, to find enough votes to overturn the Georgia presidential election results and threatened Secretary Raffensperger if he failed to do so. In my personal opinion, what's already been described warrants impeachment, but the articles continue. Thus, incited by President Trump, members of the crowd he had addressed in an attempt to, among other objectives, interfere with the joint session's solemn constitutional duty to certify the results of the 2020 presidential election, unlawfully breached and vandalized the Capitol, injured and killed law enforcement personnel, menaced members of Congress, the Vice President, and congressional personnel, and engaged in other violent, deadly, destructive, and seditious acts. This, of course, is referring to Trump's speech on the morning of the 6th during his rally when he told his supporters to march to the Capitol. They close with, Donald Trump thus warrants impeachment and trial, removal from office, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. So is the article justified? First, let's quickly recap some things about impeachment itself that often get misconstrued. Section 2 of the Constitution states that the House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers, and shall have the sole power of impeachment. Section 4 says, the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. And that's basically it. The Constitution doesn't say how the House should conduct impeachment. It doesn't say what constitutes high crimes and misdemeanors. It leaves all of that up to the House. So if you hear someone say that impeachment requires that the president violates the legal code, or that there's a specific process that the House is supposed to follow, or even that there has to be an investigation before articles are voted on, none of that is in the Constitution. Sure, there are presidential precedents, but we can't rely on them very much because impeachments are so rare and each instance is so unique. Essentially, every impeachment inquiry creates new precedent in one way or another. But back to the actual article itself. Is it justified? Let's ask one of the representatives who voted for it. Better yet, let's ask one of the 10 Republican representatives that voted for it, Jamie Herrera Butler from Washington. In tweets explaining her decision, she starts by pointing to tweets by the president himself, like this one, where he explicitly urges his followers to protest at the Capitol on the 6th. She cites his claim of a stolen election and notes his use of the word fight. She highlights another where he tells his supporters not to let the Republican Party take the presidential election away from them. She shows an example of where the president incorrectly told his supporters that Mike Pence could reject electors. She then connects the president's words around fighting to social media posts and videos that promoted and planned physical violence. Instead of working to de-escalate this rhetoric, Butler explains, the president said at his rally the morning of the 6th, when you catch somebody in a fraud
breaks up everything, doesn't it? When you catch somebody in a fraud, you're allowed to go by very different rules.
She ends her explanation on no uncertain terms. The counting of electoral college votes is the constitutional process, and a ruthless mob joined by would-be assassins stopping the counting of electoral votes by force is the epitome of attacking the Constitution. The president either wanted the mob he helped mobilize to take these steps, or he didn't care enough about his job responsibilities to try to stop them. Either way, it's impeachable. This is an extremely compelling case to me. Even if someone wanted to make the case that Trump sometimes discouraged violence, or that he didn't explicitly tell the rioters to do what they did, I don't think that's an excuse. There's a reason why past presidents have been so careful about using incendiary language. It's because plausible deniability isn't enough. The president doesn't just exist in the court of law, they also exist in the court of congressional and public opinion. In the real world, not the world of right-wing semantic arguments, words and actions have consequences. Butler wasn't the only Republican to vote for impeachment. On Fox News, Representative Liz Cheney stated,
and there's no question that the president formed the mob, the president incited the mob, the president addressed the mob, he lit the flame.
Also, in her press release, she wrote, "The President of the United States summoned this mob, assembled the mob, and lit the flame of this attack. Everything that followed was his doing. None of this would have happened without the President. The President could have immediately and forcefully intervened to stop the violence. He did not. There has never been a greater betrayal by a president of the United States of his office and his oath to the Constitution." Republican Representative Adam Kinzinger, who also voted to impeach, wrote in his press release, "There is no doubt in my mind that the President of the United States broke his oath of office and incited the insurrection. He used his position in the executive to attack the legislative. So in assessing the articles of impeachment brought before the House, I must consider, if these actions, the Article 2 branch inciting a deadly insurrection against the Article 1 branch, are not worthy of impeachment, then what is an impeachable offense? Remember, the House doesn't need to prove anything in a court of law in order to impeach the president. They only need to have what they believe to be justifiable reasons. The reasons and justifications we've seen here seem to be pretty sound. But what about the arguments against impeachment? Republican Representative Tom Reed summed them up pretty well in this op-ed in the New York Times. The least partisan excuse given for not impeaching is around timing. As Reed writes, "There is an adequate time to reasonably investigate, present, and debate articles of impeachment. Rushing through the substantive and procedural requirements for such a monumental action will directly diminish the validity of impeachment. We cannot rush to judgment simply because we want retribution, or worse, because we want to achieve a particular political outcome." It isn't clear to me how much more one would need to investigate in order to satisfy the claims made by the article. Sure, you could investigate in order to understand the full extent to which the president met the claims, but to what end? Again, there is no investigative bar laid out by the Constitution that the House needs to clear. The part about retribution is just mostly a virtue signal. Sure, some Democrats understandably want retribution, but this mostly has to do with accountability. Then there's the hand-wringing about unity. The idea is that Trump voters are really angry, and impeaching Trump will make them more angry, and that's dangerous. The implications, I guess, is that Republicans don't want the responsibility of taming the monster that they've created. As Reed puts it, with the start of a new administration and a new Congress, there is a real opportunity to build bridges and unite the American people around our shared values. Failing to do so will undermine our efforts to bring people together. It may even provide excuses and delusional incentives for those who would incite further violence. I just can't with this. This is Republicans' mess. They're the ones who have lied about the election, and they're the ones that call Democrats radical socialists who want to kill God and destroy Christmas. There's a bigger threat to national unity in not holding Trump and his sycophants accountable for their actions than there is in showing the country that there are still standards of behavior in politics and government. Finally, there's the argument that impeachment will take up time that needs to be spent responding to COVID and the economy. Well, isn't that convenient? Now, it's true that the Senate must immediately take up the issue as soon as Pelosi sends them the article. However, Pelosi can decide the timing on sending them the articles with that in mind. Also, Biden has asked McConnell to look into how much flexibility the Senate has around this rule, and McConnell has agreed to consult a parliamentarian. Either way, this obstacle can be dealt with. But it does lead us to the final question. What's the point of doing all of this if Trump will be out of office by the time the Senate convicts him, if they convict him at all? The first answer is a moral one. As Representative Steny Hoyer said,
"Is there little time left? Yes. But it is never too late to do the right thing.
But the practical reason is that impeaching the president gives the Senate the opportunity to withhold from him the ability to hold office again. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment reads, "No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office civil or military under the United States or any state who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof." Oh God, who wrote this thing? The president has proven that he can't be trusted to honor the oath of any office he takes. He spent his entire time as president trying to consolidate power and disrupt democracy. He's a demagogue, and he's capable of demagoguing his way into a large minority of support. And we have such a dumb electoral system in this country that a demagogue with a large minority of support can become president. Given his actions and behavior as president, it's completely justifiable to take that off the table. Thanks for watching. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it, and share this video with your friends who are interested in this kind of thing. Subscribe to the channel and enable notifications so you don't miss any future episodes. Also, let me know if you prefer that I record here or over on the couch. I'm kind of curious. Also, check out my TikTok. There's way more that happens during the week than I can talk about here, and most of it ends up there, so I think you'll like it. I'll link it in the description. Have the best week that you can, and I'll see you on Sunday.